Minnesota sports fans, we know all too well how it feels to sign up for a lifetime of purple pain. Welcome to Before We Die with Jesse and Thor on Purple Daily and Score North.
What's going on, everybody? Your Monday edition of Before We Die. I'm Jesse Pierce. You may know me from NHL.com, Bar Down Beauties podcast, but given Vikings a try this season because I have been a purple diehard since 1998. I'm just kidding. It's actually when they first broke my heart. It was a sad time. This life chose me. I did not choose it. He's Thor Nystrom from Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros, and he's been losing on the Vikings since, I don't know what, 2000, Thor? What do we got?
Thor's too cool to talk to us. Yeah. He muted himself.
I knew he was not going to hit that button. Like he came in on time today, guys. And I thought we were going to go off, and all right, there we go.
Technology, it's way above my pay grade. But since 1984, since the day I was born, baby.
Just losing money. And Ross Brendel, our producer, he enjoys the Vikings pain, as we all do, because it just lets you know that you're still alive, right? Right, Ross?
Sometimes you got to have that pain to know you're still breathing.
I mean, I felt like I lost all of my emotions this weekend. But again, this is Purple Dailies Before We Die on Score North. Thanks for joining us this Monday. Minnesota Vikings, ladies and gentlemen, they win. I should be elated. I should be thrilled. 29-22 victory over the Chicago Bears. Moved to 4-1 on the season. But I'm not happy, guys. The emotions I have are not happy. This little guy, he ain't happy either. Because a 21-3 first half lead falters. Chicago scores 19. I wish I could draw in the bread in the PBJ situation, but I can't. It was just a bad comeback, for bad letdown for Minnesota. They get the win, but again, my emotions, they're dead. I'm dead on the inside these days, guys.
Yeah, I was watching the game with some buddies at the Moose Bar in Northeast, and the Vikings jumped out to that 21-3 lead, and Cousins could not miss, literally, at the beginning of the game, went 17 for 17 to begin the game, a franchise record. And the Vikings jump out to that enormous lead. Justin Jefferson had over 130 receiving yards in the first half, just dominant to begin. And then before you know it, you look, it started with that Darnell Mooney ridiculous catch downfield. And that didn't concern you because you're like, oh, we're up 18, even when they scored the touchdown. But then it was like, before you knew it, all of a sudden it was 22-21 Bears. And you're like, oh my God. It got away so quickly. And, the Vikings, ended up winning by 7. And that's great. That's the story. The Vikings being in sole possession of first place of the NFC North and really having a 2-game lead when you count in the tiebreakers. But yeah, there's plenty of stuff to work on, for sure. But, again, positive being 4-1, first place of the division, when you know that there's several things that you can still improve on that hopefully will improve.
A lot of improvements to be made. We'll talk about the positive things as well. I think my bigger, again, frustration, and it continues, you're not battling adversity to win these games, right? It's not a challenge because, you've got injuries or you've got bad calls going away. You're battling adversity because you're letting yourself down. You're not finishing the game. You're making mistakes that are very avoidable. So that to me is where the frustration lies. It's not, you're eking out these victories and those are going to be the hard fought ones that matter in the end. No, you're losing to yourself for the most part. I mean, really, it's some of those mistakes, some of those things that can be cleaned up. Again, you mentioned Kirk Cousins, Thor. Again, love him or hate him every time. Hot start for Kirk Cousins, you guys. Love to see it. He was clutch in the fourth again, which is something that we've seen consistently out of him this season. But how great was it to see him throw 17 straight completions and just come out the gate roaring like we had suggested on last Thursday's episode as being the key to getting this victory.
It was fabulous. And you knew you were going up against a poor defense in a prototypical Kirk Cousins spot, a nooner at home. And that bad defense, the Bears defense, did not have their best cornerback in Johnson. The kid from Utah was out. So you knew you were in this extremely advantageous spot. You wanted to see the Vikings come out and blow this team out. We talked about this last week after you'd had all this procession of close wins. And that's exactly what it looked like it was going to be for the, first, half of the game or whatever. And then, like I said, before you knew it, snap your finger. And the Bears not only were back in the game, they were actually leading it, which was just a wild turn of events. I'm sure we'll talk about it here in a little bit. I'm getting quite annoyed with Mr. Ed Donatel. All Justin Fields needed to look like a competent quarterback again was facing an Ed Donatel defense. So we'll get into that for sure. But, again, the Vikings do come out with a win, and several players had awesome games. That the offensive line in particular for the Vikings looked very, very good yesterday. And also Dalvin Cook looked reinvigorated running behind that very good offensive line as well. So you had several positive performances.
I was going to say, Thor, stay on course here. We're talking positives first before we get negative Nancy on these folks, right?
Yeah.
Before
we rip Ed Donatel, because there's no D in Donatel, Kirk Cousins, we got the full Kirk Cousins experience yesterday. We got noon game Kirk for the first half. Okay, so that was great. Check that box. We got 2022 Kirk. All he does is lead the team from behind to win football games. Now we just need to get full game Kirk. That would be great for eliminating the second half letdowns where you have to come back to win the game. Overall, again, I feel like I've now said this. I probably have 3 straight podcasts. You still have to feel good. You're 4-1. You now lead the division all by yourself. Thanks for the help, New York Giants. And again, if you're going to be critical of Kirk Cousins, like I often have been, I think you need to praise him when it merits it, no matter who the opponent is. When you can lead your team down the field and win a football game late, that's big time stuff. Can they do it against some of the better teams that they'll face? Time will tell. Or maybe hopefully time won't tell. Maybe you're just dominating the game and you don't need to come from behind. But I think that's what we are really looking forward to as we already start to approach almost the middle portion of the schedule. We're 5 down, 12 to go.
I mean, it's looking good. Like I said, you got to give Kirk credit where credit is due. The entire Vikings team, however, I was like in Mortal Kombat watching that game when they're up and they're just destroying them. I'm like, finish them, and like wanting something aggressive, a bunch of extra violent touchdowns. I did not see any out of Adam Thielen. That sucked. But no, Kirk Cousins did well. JJ did well. They said it from Kirk Cousins. He said, I'm not where I was at the end of last season in that old system, but we're developing it and we're getting there. And I'm excited about that continued growth. Now, I think we can all be very excited about that continued growth again when you get that win down for the team at the end of it. JJ, let's talk about Justin Jefferson. In the first quarter alone, 7 catches for 91 yards. On single defenders, a career high 12 receptions, 13 targets for 154 yards. He leads the NFL, you guys, with 547 receiving yards and is second only to LA Rams and former KOC receiver Cooper Kupp with 40 receptions. I mean, JJ seems to, again, be doing it all. I know we questioned it, although he had an easy task, right? He had single defenders for the very beginning of the game, which was just irresponsible out of Chicago. But I think he's starting to kind of learn the different formations. You see him be much more successful on the left side, but you're also seeing quite a few movements from the slot and up the right. I mean, I think that's a positive thing, knowing that Jefferson is getting more comfortable in those different spots in the formation.
1,000%. And we knew coming out of LSU, this is one of the great things about Jefferson. He cooked people everywhere at LSU. So, I mean, like coming in, a lot of college receivers, whether they're fixed at one spot in the alignment or whether they're a boundary receiver that's been on both the outsides but haven't done as much stuff in the slot. Jefferson in 2018, the season before the historic season, he was a boundary receiver. And then in 2019, when it was Burrow and Jamar Chase and Terrace Marshall, when they became truly dominant at LSU, they moved Jefferson inside. And that's when he had the truly insane season. But we've seen him excel, in college at both of them. And now it seems like O'Connell is going to use the full manifestation of Jefferson's powers. And that's what we've been advocating for, of course, as well, with the motion, with getting him involved at different spots in the alignment, keeping the defense off the beat of the scent of where he's going to end up in the alignment and different stuff like that. So that's all beautiful to see. It was really cool too. The thing about him passing Randy Moss and catches in his first 3 seasons. Jefferson is now up to 236 in 36 games. Moss had 226 in 48 to show you what a historic pace that Jefferson is already on early on. And now that he gets to play out what should be, hopefully, knock on wood, a good portion of his career with Kevin O'Connell. You would expect that to just keep accelerating up. So it's all positive with Justin Jefferson.
And albeit the Bears, I think not only is it important that JJ is learning how to utilize himself in the KOC offense, I think it's important that the telecast showed it yesterday. KOC scheming up things where essentially JJ, for the most part, is just kind of a dummy. He's clearing space. He's not a dummy. It's a dummy route.
Yes,
yeah, you know what? You know where I'm going.
We got you.
I'll take heat for that in the comments. Comment on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, please do that. But they're using him to clear space for the KJ Osbornes, for the Adam Thielens, for the Irv Smiths, for the Johnny Munts. So that's good to see, too. On days where, look, they might put 2 or 3 defenders on Justin Jefferson. You're going to need to be able to do those things. And I thought that was a good sign yesterday if we're sticking with the theme of the good before we talk about the bad.
We got, we're keeping the fans interested, you guys. This is for you. We're staying positive to start. Again, a win is a win, so that's positive. Another positive on the offense, Dalvin Cook, ladies and gentlemen. We're seeing a good split between Cook and Madison, but man, oh man, was he cooking, pun obviously very much intended. Looked fantastic, catching passes in the backfield. What was your guys' perception of how Dalvin's played? And again, now that we're 5 games in, he's healthy, he's doing things right. I mean, this is what we've wanted and expected all along, right?
Dalvin looked great. Best game of the season. And we had talked about how we wanted the timeshare between him and Madison to get closer to 60-40 when, earlier in the season when Dalvin did not look quite as explosive. Yesterday, the snap share was Dalvin got 45 snaps, Madison got 34. Is it any coincidence that Dalvin looked the most explosive that he had been all season? And not particularly close, by the way. Just looked absolutely fabulous. And, like I mentioned before, the offensive line played just awesome yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So that definitely helped. But Dalvin looked noticeably, like I said, the acceleration was there. The footwork looked better than it had been earlier in the season as well. So that stuff was all working. And I think that the fact that you can keep him fresher during the game, it just helps him more. I mean, it's no knock on Dalvin Cook. When you're an NFL running back and you get up to the age that he is now, that just happens. You don't need him on the field every single snap of the game when you have a back the quality of Alexander Madison. And Madison, he played way better earlier in the season. I didn't think yesterday was his best game of the year by any means, but he doesn't take stuff off the table when he's on the field. So getting him work, especially on the passing downs, and getting Dalvin a blow for those so that Dalvin's 100% when he's in, when you need him to run the ball. That's what you want for this offense. And yesterday, I thought it worked beautifully.
Dalvin Cook netting a 75.3 PFF grade, his best of the season. So that's definitely positive. Can I do an aside here, guys? Alexander Madison might be one of the funniest players on the Vikings. Did you guys see they have their riddle cam coming off the field? Did you guys see last week's riddle cam?
I did not see the last week.
Oh my gosh. It was him and Thor's going to come at me. It was an Iowa State player as well that is on the Vikings team. Kene
Nwangwu?
Yep, him. It was those two
that
guys. That guy. The riddle was, what can you put in a bucket to make it weigh less?
A hole?
There you go. Nailed it. All right. But it took those two guys quite a bit longer, but they were hilarious in their approach. Like, Madsen starts to kind of rap and he's getting really aggressive with it. And he's like, no, what we got to do is we got to leave and come back with the new group and pretend like it's the first time. And like, I don't know. It was absolutely hilarious. So shout out to Alexander Madsen because I found him very entertaining. Like, I've watched that quite a few times and I laugh every time like it's the first. So shout out to them. Shout out to the Vikings for producing content that gets us some good sides. Speaking of, again, PFF, speaking of positives, the offensive line. We've mentioned it quite a few times already in this week's episode. By far the best showing that we have seen from the offensive line. We've talked at length about Christian Darrisaw and how explosive he's been, how great he has been. But on Sunday, they truly shine. Ezra Cleveland, 90 PFF. He topped the team. Christian Darrisaw, 82.9. Brian O'Neill, 73.9. And even Garrett Bradbury getting in the mix, 72.1. Ironically, the only O-lineman who didn't grade as well, Ed Ingram, who we've been so thrilled with. I mean, he still did just fine, but it wasn't as well as he's done in the past. But guys, what can we say about this O-line? I also want to give a shout out to the third down offense. Best outing yet, probably, converting on 12 of 15 and all 5 final drives. Love to see it.
The offensive line was fabulous. In particular, the left side of the offensive line, which was almost immaculate. Between Christian Darrisaw, Ezra Cleveland, and Bradbury, 0 pressures allowed in 129 combined pass pro reps. Just erase that side of the Bears line. You love to see that. Ezra Cleveland, going back to PFF grades, which again, I always give the caveat that they're not the be all end all, but they're, it's, in terms of a general thing. Ezra Cleveland had a 90.0 PFF grade yesterday. 90 is always sort of the threshold for elite. Love to see that. Darrisaw with another game over 80, and Darrisaw was over 90 in the pass blocking. No one was even close. The guy that was on Darrisaw never even got close to Cousins. Darrisaw, I think I talked about him last week, and I got reticent when I was about to say the word elite with him because I don't want to go over the top. I'm getting closer to saying the word elite. He is moving in.
You need to watch more PJ, apparently.
Apparently. He's moving in on being, he's for sure going to the Pro Bowl this year. He very, very, very well may be an all-pro left tackle this year. I think right now in the PFF grades in all of football, I believe he is a top 3 graded tackle, like to right now. He is playing so well, both again, in the run game for sure, but in the pass game, he has just been so good. And it makes Cousins' job so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
He's been awesome, but then Cleveland's game has stepped up. Bradbury's game has stepped way up. Bradbury's gone from one of the worst centers in the league to like at least an average starter.
A competent center, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then and then at the other guard spot, whereas before you had Flotsam there. Ed Ingram, yesterday wasn't his best game for sure. But right now you'd probably consider him a league average guard because in the run game he's already really good, and in the pass game it's hit or miss. Like he struggles against the crafty veterans with the moves is what it is. He going to figure that out, but the rookie year it might be hit or miss. But the pass protection that Cousins gets is consistently very good, and that's going to portend well. But hats off to the left side of the offensive line in particular. Hats off to Cleveland, and in particular, hats off to Christian Darrisaw, who, as I said last week, is a star.
Mm-hmm. Can we talk about the Kirk Cousins pulling a Michael Vick at the end too with that run? I was like, who is this? Who is this guy at quarterback? Like, it was a beautiful thing to watch. It was just, he gets that time and he went. I think that, in addition to some of the creativity you saw out of the offense on Sunday too, we saw a wide receiver throwback and a flea flicker tight end screen. Not successful, but as Ross has pointed out to us off the air, the creativity is there, which makes it fun, even if it doesn't always work out.
I think if you're going to run that play, maybe you want to put it in the hands of a wide receiver. But again, as we have alluded to, the creativity is nice to see. The wide receiver throwback was fun. The motions have been fun to see. I really think a lot of what we talk about with the offense, where they have the gaps in games where they're not scoring or it looks disjointed, I really think that will figure itself out. Now, I know I keep saying that every week and we're kind of going through the motions, but I still have faith that will work itself out because I trust Kevin O'Connell and I trust the offense. And let's be honest, you guys might disagree with me, but I think there's far more talent on the offensive side of the ball for the Vikings than there is on the defensive side of the ball. Definitely. So I trust that the players will figure it out and that it will all come together. I don't want to derail your thoughts, Jesse, or where you were going to go, but I think it's time we rip the Band-Aid off this.
It's ready. I was
okay.
Ready.
Let's go.
I was starting
let's
to feel
go.
too happy, I just was kind of like, it wasn't a perfect game by any means. Let me stretch it out before
As a closet Packers fan, you were too positive for the first 20 minutes. So let's get negative.
No, that was kind of how I felt going into my fantasy football game this week. I was very, very positive. I was like, you know what? We got this. Derrick Henry popping off. Love to see it.
Obligatory fantasy football mention.
Had to get it in there.
Had to get it in there.
And then I lost because I went up against Josh Allen and Dalvin Cook. So that was fun. So similar to that, there was a downfall in the Minnesota Vikings that obviously led to 19 straight points from the Chicago Bears, kept it as close as they did. And that is, as has been a theme, the defense, which just continues to struggle over and over and over again. And sure, we can pump up Cam Dantzler's game-winning strip of former Viking Amir Smith-Marset, but otherwise, I don't know. There still is no change, you guys. Like, I don't know how you force Ed Dontel to change when he clearly needs to. There's clearly holes. There's clearly gaps, breakdowns, everything. Every negative word, throw it at this defense because it's not making the cut. Again, if you can't stop Justin Fields in a very weak Chicago offense, there's something seriously wrong. You can't count on just the offense to carry you to victory. The defense has to start pulling their weight too.
1,000%. Yeah. And like I said before, I'm getting real sick of Donatel. The talent, it's not awesome. So I will give him that slight caveat where across the field, you have a couple guys that are above average, but there's a lot of starters that are either, in terms of the NFL are either average or below average, but you do have some really good players. It's just that they're being misused, right? Like, I mean, we'll go to the two obvious examples. Harrison Smith, who's one of the best box safeties in the NFL, one of the most like havoc creating safeties in the NFL. And he is miles away from the box on every single play because Donatel loves playing his two deep safety thing. So Harrison Smith on most plays doesn't get anywhere near the ball just because of what the alignment is. And situationally, there are times that dictate, hey, Ed, you mind bringing Harrison closer to the effing ball? Like in this situation, you mind, Ed? Do you mind? And then the other one, of course, being Daniil Hunter. And it's tough, right? Like he's been a stud 4-3 defensive end his entire career with his hand in the dirt. And now you're moving him to the 3-4 outside linebacker. And yes, it's going to be a transition period, right? Like he's doing different stuff now. It's a different alignment. It's different rushing, from a stand-up, hand in the dirt, etc. But it has been an extremely slow acclimation. And then the thing that's frustrating me about Donatel with him on the field, because I don't know how he's teaching Hunter in practice. Like I'm not there, but like he is dropping Hunter into coverage and into space far too often. Like Hunter should be rushing the passer on every single play, right? Like every single time you drop Hunter into space, the opposing offensive coordinator is like, yes, right? Like, it's what they want. And it's happening too often. And Hunter has acquitted himself a little bit better in space than I probably thought he would, but you're taking him away as a pass rusher when you do that. And he has also been far worse as a pass rusher than I expected him to be in the system so far. So that needs to get figured out. And you also need to start sending him more, and maybe that will help out as well. But something needs to get figured out there. And if he's just not a fit in this scheme, I'm not willing to say that yet. But if that referendum is decided upon, then you got to either fire Donatel or you trade Hunter. You can't just leave him out there as a below average starter with the value that he has as a 4-3 defensive end. Trade him to a 4-3 team and get some real value back if that's what it's going to be. But this is getting really awkward with Daniil Hunter. He did not play well yesterday against the Bears.
Yeah, and Thor, we've talked about this. The issue that I have with the scheme might just be that you're relying too much on your front 3 or 4 when you send one to get pressure. Well, if they're not getting pressure, it's leaving guys wide open because of how far back the safeties and the cornerbacks are. And again, I've said this now a few weeks in a row. I don't care if that's what you're doing 60, 70% of the time. Whatever. That's your scheme. I get it. You're going to live by that. You're going to die by that. But have some variations. Yes. Have some wrinkles.
That's right.
Do some things a little bit differently throughout the game. Make some adjustments.
Yeah.
You can't allow a guy like Justin Fields, who is struggling with confidence, has one wide receiver, albeit very good, to throw to, and Cole Kmet, who hasn't done much all season, suddenly catches 25 balls yesterday. You can't allow a guy like that to get comfortable and stay in the game. And I'll say this, the Vikings offense did some of that. They let the Bears hang around too.
Right.
it's not all on the defense, but it's an alarming trend, seeing it now for 5 straight weeks. And you can see how this trend will hurt them and come back to bite them in the you-know-what when they play better teams and better offenses, including this upcoming weekend against Miami, no matter who their starting quarterback is. It's got to get figured out. You're not going to fire a guy after 5 games. My biggest complaint has been, or the biggest way I've tried to sell it to people, I don't know if it's all Ed Donatel or if it's just that a lot of your best players on defense are aging players. My guess is it probably meets somewhere in the middle. But if it's going to meet somewhere in the middle because of that, then the defense should start to meet somewhere in the middle, right? Yeah. It's just got to get incrementally better by the week, and it just hasn't.
I mean, I think that's the problem too, is they're coming up and being clutch when they need to, right? You talk about Cam Dantzler, you're talking about them shutting down. They're very opportunistic in that sense, and that's great, but it's also luck. I mean, you look at the way the Vikings have won just the past 2, stripping that ball, you could say there's obviously skill there too, but that's also partially luck. Like, Mir Marset should have gotten out of bounds, should have pushed a little. I mean, that was just partial luck. And I mean, even
how many times? How many times are you going to rip a ball out of somebody's hands?
Right,
to
it
win
doesn't
games?
happen. Like, for sure,
doesn't happen much.
Even cornerback Patrick Peterson in our second, they said it had mentioned lady luck. The ball is falling our way, but we were put in these situations last year, having most of the guys back. They understand how to prevail. You can't rely on that. Like, I don't like it. That doesn't give me any confidence. And I also am concerned at the lack of just general aggressiveness that Ed Donatel's defense seems to have, especially in the secondary. Like, there is just no, I don't even want to say urgency. There's just literally no aggressive manner to them. I'm not talking about blitzing necessarily more. It's just in general, like, attack, like, do something. And it's increasingly frustrating. It's I mean, it's a problem. It's not a recipe for success, especially in the long term.
The defensive scheme of intentionally not having cornerbacks or safeties anywhere near wide receivers and tight ends sure is interesting and bold, but at least to this point, the team is 4-1. I said this yesterday too, at Brendel Ross on the Twitter machine. People are wondering, well, where are the receivers? Where are the safeties? Why aren't they covering anybody? It's really hard to cover the opponent when you're lining up in St. Paul and the game is in Minneapolis. It's really, really tough to do that.
Yikes. I mean, it's just, sorry. It's a problem. It's just, I don't know. I don't know what to do.
I do want to say, since we're ripping on the secondary, and they do deserve to be ripped on because every one of them except for one played bad, but I do want to shout out the one that had an awesome game. Cam Dantzler played awesome. It wasn't he saved the game at the very end, of course, ripping it away from Smith Marset, but he had an awesome game before that. Again, the rest of them, you throw away the game that they had. They did not play well. But Cam Dantzler had an awesome game, and continuing a season where he has played very, very well, taking a step forward.
Yeah.
Did anybody on defense in the post game tell us to STFU this week, or was that just a one game thing?
If they listen to this podcast, they might. Ed Donatel might be telling us to STFU.
Yeah, my husband definitely said STFU to me because he listened to my prediction for Adam Thielen and 3 touchdowns. So he switched from Justin Jefferson in one of his prop bets, and he shouldn't have done that. That was a problem. So I think he ended up winning. I think Adam Thielen still got him the yards that were needed, but not easily like we projected. But seriously, listen to us here. We know all, we tell all. If not, it's fun talking about it.
If not, we make it up, right?
We make it up, and we will say it in a convincing manner that makes you believe it. So what's true, what's not, who knows? Hiding behind the curtain. Anyway, that's just a bunch of words I just spouted out there as we wrap things up here on our Monday edition of Before We Die. Let's wrap it up with, as always, our Before We Dies.
Time now for the Before We Die crew to give us their Before We Dies.
Look at producer Ross just coming through with the inserts. Love it. We love it.
Skull.
Who's starting? Production value now. I'll go first.
Let's go forth.
Yeah, I'll go first. I would like, before I die, for the Vikings to make a trade before the trade deadline. Now that the Vikings are a legitimate contender at 4-1, specifically, I would like one trade each for the offense and the defense. Maybe a couple trades for the defense and maybe a coordinator firing as well. But on offense,
just settle down on one here, man.
Okay, well, on offense, I would like to get a true inline tight end. And Irv had a solid game yesterday, but I don't think that Irv is a real inline tight end like I've talked about before. I would like him to be more of a niche matchup specific kind of player, and for us to get a true inline tight end. So I would like to see a trade for that, and then I would like to see a trade for a cornerback on defense. So that's what I would like to see before I die.
I like it, Rob.
Before we die, I thought about this yesterday and the Vikings' long history of struggling to win games at Soldier Field. Before, I'm going to steal a page out of Thor's book where he just kind of makes up his own before I dies and doesn't really play within the rules. Before I die this season, the Vikings will go to Soldier Field in week 17 and win or lose, the result won't matter. Because I'm already worried about, or week 18, sorry. I'm already ending the season there and needing a win for it to, make you the number 1 seed or needing a win to win the division. I want no part of crappy Soldier Field turf when it's 8 degrees outside and muddy. I want nothing to do with that. So before I die, that week 18 game will mean nothing.
Love it.
Before I die, Kirk Cousins is going to have his own chain that you will be able to purchase as well at fan stores. It sounds like great stuff, but I want a Kirk Cousins to have his own chain at the end of the season. Hopefully it's by the end of the season, if not earlier. It just seems right. Let's give him a little bit of cool, right? Let's give him a little bit of Joe Cool edge, just because I would really appreciate it.
And then we'll all wear it on an episode.
Well, there you go. Exactly. Sounds simple enough. Again, this is Purple Dailies Before We Die on Score North. I'm Jesse Pierce, usual cover of the National Hockey League, but also covering Minnesota Vikings here every Monday and Thursday with you guys. He's Thor Nystrom for Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros, constantly losing money on the Minnesota Vikings and the Iowa Hawkeyes, as well as Ross Brendel, our producer, who enjoys the Vikings' pain like we all do. That's it. Have a great rest of the week. We'll see you guys on Thursday to preview the game against the Dolphins in Miami at noon on Sunday.
Skol Vikings.